12:20 on the 14th of the 6th, 2023, and there's still a matter, unfortunately, that's not being addressed. There must be huge resistance to reality, which tells me that people aren't really comfortable with the circumstances that they have to confront eventually. It's not only immature, irresponsible, and unprofessional, but those that aren't fulfilling their duties, responsibilities, or functions to this person on this documentary are failing themselves. When a person makes a conscious decision to be incompetent in their profession, then they're just letting themselves and their standards drop to an all-time low. So this resistance to the reality of these circumstances that I'm unfortunately confronted with by individuals that are immature in adulthood, or that are ASBO in adulthood, are really a disappointment to society, and a disappointment, well, I suppose it's to be anticipated. We know what COVID-19 has brought to light. I'm aware that there have been predators in my proximity of a political stance that have offended my family name for over 20 years now. They're repeat offenders. They've implicated themselves on my property matters, and they've defamed my family name. So they're repeat offenders of the state. They've disrespected royal protocol. They're in my proximity where they've no legal right to be, and they have a slanderous reputation in society that's quite deplorable, and the financial fraud associated with them from my fortunes is quite huge as well. So these problems that haven't been addressed are kind of a disappointment for democracy. It's a professional failure of any individual not to have the integrity, respect, dignity, or honourability. The buzzwords, as they say, the typical commonplace values of any individual in a public service or private service position. So there are people that think they're going to continue living off my COVID-19 legislation that they've subjected to academic fraud. Now, the United Kingdom is fully aware of my circumstances, as is the European Parliament. Now, there's a little clique in County Kerry that have been causing issues in society for 20 years, and we've seen the casualties, and they've done their repair job and their reform fraud about their principles with regard to good conduct and reparations, etc. But unfortunately, it's incomplete, and it's not actually in adherence to protocol. So I'm still in a circumstance in County Kerry where the Family Protection Office is not working with the values of equality and so on and so forth, and yet still their servants are stealing from the state, I suppose, living off my legislation and taking a wage that they're not doing their job for. So it's a huge discrepancy between standards and expectations that I'm witnessing. And I'm a qualified professional of royal protocol, and I don't feel very comfortable with people thinking that they're walking onto farmland where my child and I own, and where we've been defamed or disrespected. It's very dangerous, the church that I am of, being damaged or defamed or disrespected in any respect. So there's a little discrepancy with where I am at the moment. That was short-term accommodation for now 5 years or so, and the state still feels that it doesn't have to do anything about anything. Like, it's gas crack here in County Kerry. I'd say, if we were to look at the reality of the circumstances, the enemies of the state and the crimes against the state to offend me are going to cost the state a little bit more than the debt that they already owe me. So I don't know if they're working with the reality. So this is a documentary. I'm an artist, and I'm experiencing cybercrime, and I'm healing, and all these problems are being put down to treason. I'm a married mother, and it's awful tough, but look at these things happen when people are ASBO. It's how to contend with ASBOs is the difficult part, but at least I'm qualified. So the awful disappointment is that people aren't competent in their profession, and they've got an awful repertoire of slander of my royal titles behind them. And the problem is that they're spending money that they're not actually in ownership of, and they're disrespecting my COVID-19 legislation. And that's very dangerous. That is the height of dangerous display of poor professionalism. It's a display of poor professionalism. And there are people in my proximity that are really not safe for people's children. Like when people break the law, and if people assume that they own my farms because they're changing a few names here and there, they must be taking narcotics or on heavy medication. People in my proximity, presently, currently, and right now, that are defaming my good name and my royal titles, must be suffering from a mental illness or disease that I am not fully, able to relate to. And the COVID-19 legislation that came from my experiences, strengths and hopes of 20 years of recovery advocacy and education and contributions to the state are all at high risk. Now, this little clique in County Kerry that thinks they're going to change a few names and a few forms and produce more slander and defamation and put defamation of cybercrime matters in place as well. They're not very good for party politics that they are talking of, or that they have a poor reputation already from, with the harms and deaths and damages and disrespect they've caused to Irish society. So this issue of these people that have caused awful damages to people's families, it's awful serious. Debts outstanding and owing from the United Kingdom and Ireland to my name. Is it the children that they're expecting to pay their debts? Is it the children that they expect to carry their irresponsible casualties of? My child is missing illegally from my care as of January 2017 because of ASBOs in this community, false reporting and defaming my good name, and of poor politics that disrespected the constitution of Eamon de Valera. I find that highly offensive to Eamon de Valera and his contributions to the Irish state. So these people don't seem to understand the laws of the land or the laws of nature, and they're exploiting from the church of my royalty. Now, those people that are suffering from mental illness, that have no etiquette training or that have no professional training, might be careful about boundaries and lines that they're overstepping. It's very dangerous spending money that you don't own. And this issue of people disrespecting the recovery and reparations that my recovery advocacy has brought to the table, that's all very serious. There are people talking out of place, people talking about matters that they don't have ownership of, the language or the words or the things or thoughts that they're conveying in their communications. There are people discussing things that breach confidentiality, privacy and anonymity laws. And these people seem to think they're above the law, but what they don't seem to recognise is that they're not of royal protocol. It's very dangerous disrespecting the church and my holy vows. As I've said, I'm a married mother and I intend staying a married mother, and any individuals that change or tweak any paperwork on behalf of farm fraud are putting themselves at risk. It's a punishable crime. My child still hasn't been located. Now, COVID-19 came from my experiences. In January 2017, my child was illegally separated from me by individuals in this community in the southwest of Ireland that are still guilty to this day and still causing me offence. That's their children's issues that they have to contend with. It's called a generational matter. These people carry their problems onto other times and days and places, and they keep running away from their problems, and they're dodging and ducking and diving, and they're just showing irresponsible behaviour. So any servants of the state, I hope they're aware of where their bread and butter is coming from. Some people are biting the hand that is fed. My recovery advocacy has saved people's lives and wealth, and I don't like people offending me with slander, defamation or debts unmet. So it would be really, really wise, intelligent and safe if, as I have said before, those obstructing, without qualifications, without experience or without any kudos, as they say in the entertainment scene, those people that are in the way, trespassing on my way, onto my farms with fraud, really need to move out of the places where they're standing in the way. They're a threat to other people's little children. And that is unsafe for the pillars of democracy. So those that have been of debts unmet, defamation, disrespect to the church and my holy matrimony, they're a disservice to little children's futures. So I hope everyone's been really smart. I have my details online, and those that I have requested to contact me from Europe, simply due to the failings of the Irish democracy with the old begrudgery mentality as usual and the troubles. This small little island, it's so serious. From a sociological, I'm wearing my cultural studies hat now from the University of Limerick, but from a sociological perspective, this little country has caused the most dangerous troubles with a mentality that is highly unsafe, unhealthy, and not at all progressive. So those people that are standing in the way of progress and disrespecting my COVID-19 legislation with more fraud as well as my farms and my child's upbringing, they might have a reality check. Some people aren't in a very good place with the church or the faith that they represent or claim to be of, and they need to really be careful about the principles, values, and ethics, and so on and so forth, of the slander that they've supported and the theft and stealing that they've supported, and then claiming to be of faith practices that they really owe a lot of penance to. So these people that have slandered my name and are of repeat offences that have been on my properties and interfering with my little boy, they might be careful about their children's futures and the example that they're setting to their children's futures. It's very unsafe to be putting children's lives at risk. So those that are in the way, living off my legislation and my land and the wealth that they owe my way, they might be careful about getting in the way of progress. Regression and begrudgery and the fraud and identity theft I'm experiencing are really not in the best interests of the children of the future. And I have, as an educator and a humanitarian royal mother, I've only done the best with the capability and ability and qualifications that I have to help progress in this country. And that came about in 2019 with Brexit and COVID-19. So just in case anyone's thinking of regressing with more slander or evasion or exacerbation, please think of the little girls and boys and all the bad faith practices that have been going on in this community. It's a sad sign of the times.